Last year, I went back and reviewed not Nickelodeon as a network, but the show bumpers the network used from the mid-1980s through to the late 2000s. It's rough, some of the info isn't completely accurate, my apologies, but Nick fans are still reorganizing the history book. Its closest competitor, Cartoon Network, doesn't have that misfortune. Its various phases have been well documented, and some of them even have their own fan bases. Once again, I've got around a dozen different brandings and styles I want to touch on, and I think they all tell the story of the network's history quite well. And yes, I'll be covering almost all of them to date. Way back in 1992, when the channel solely existed to rerun Golden Age animations, there was nothing to hide. Production art and chroma keyed sequences from classic cartoons were played constantly against walls and walls of checkerboard patterns. There was a party on this channel, and all the cartoons your parents watched were invited. I can't really say a lot else about this era. It got the ball rolling with a strong, coherent message, and for the time, an impressive lineup. But after the What a Cartoon Show started producing full-fledged original shows, and those became Cartoon Network's top priority, a new look was rolled out dubbed the Starburst era.
Cow and chicken, tonight at 8 on Cartoon Network.
It didn't last long, roughly one television season, and was mostly done to differentiate their legacy content from their new lineup, dubbed the Cartoon Cartoons.
Cartoon!
I know that name holds a lot of nostalgia for millennials, but I don't know, it's too corny for me. But I digress. The Starburst era is fine, but could have had more of an attitude. Hello, gorgeous. The Powerhouse era is named after Powerhouse, a piece of music commonly associated with Looney Tunes, composed by Raymond Scott, with a louder, more bombastic rendition being used as the network's theme song for a majority of this era. You got a heaping load of new animation from nearly every show they aired every day, no matter if it was an oldie or a cartoon, or just a set of animators having too much fun with the word next. It always had personality, energy, and care, and for many who grew up in the 90s and 2000s, this will always be the golden age of Cartoon Network. Though that's sometimes more because this was when many of their most acclaimed series began, but it's certainly my personal favourite to look back on stylistically. Now I want to talk about the branding of perhaps the network's most famous programming block, Cartoon Fridays. It's really its own special thing, and serves as build-up to the next era too. This block would air new episodes of the cartoons, but also feature skits of their characters hosting and interacting with each other. I can't imagine how happy this made fans of these characters.
Come on, Mojo, do the monkey with me. Oh, come on, you're a monkey. This should be natural for you. Monkey, yeah, do the monkey.
That is not a monkey.
Come on, Mojo, do the monkey with me.
You're making me very angry.
Do the monkey,
You will not
do the monkey.
like me when I'm angry.
And it was a novelty Cartoon Network did their best to lean into during the 2000s. As the Powerhouse years went on, they do more short bits of the characters all interacting in a live-action space, and really went to town with the idea in 2003, when the Powerhouse branding slowly peeled away. And when I say they went to town, I mean it. 7 years and 6 announcers later, the CN revealed its biggest rebrand yet. Not only was a second logo unveiled, but now the shows were separated by bumpers set in a huge CGI city where all the characters lived. Beautifully animated by the animation studio Animal Logic, the CN City is a fan favorite era for just how comfortable it makes you feel with all these worlds and their inhabitants. Sure, some of your enjoyment from these bumpers may be cost if you don't like the shows they feature. Indeed, most of the network's legacy content was getting the boomerang now. But for as long as these were affordable, they were a delight, and were a culmination of the old slogan, Cartoon Network wasn't just a channel, it was the best place for all these cartoons.
TV! TV, 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 TV.
What happened here? These are a huge step back. Thankfully, this was a concurrent sub-branding, meaning that some city bumpers were still being used, but you saw just as much of these. A random character from a random show will pop on screen and say something random, followed by Fred Fredburger shouting, "Yes!" Before you ask, no, the overuse of Fred from The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy and Cheese from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends isn't why I don't like those shows. These bumpers didn't even air down here as far as I can remember. But that being said, these feel significantly cheaper and give you less of an incentive to keep watching the channel. But it was the eras after this that made longtime fans more worried. The summer branding got rid of all the city imagery and pretty much all interaction between cartoon characters, leaning more into live-action hosting and skater culture-esque art of the cartoon characters. It was retired after 3 months and replaced with fall branding. Want to know how long the fall branding lasted? 10 months. Nearly an entire year of a very confused identity. Cartoon Network no longer really caring to show it was about cartoons and the same rock song by the Hives over and over again. Compared to just 5 years ago, heck, compared to just 2 years ago, this did not look like a healthy network. There is some merit to this design work, Sheila Productions didn't do a half-bad job, but still, it's opening itself to puns about the fall of Cartoon Network as well. Even most of the original cartoons and subsequent originals were disappearing around this point, leaving audiences with just one inhibition: send nudes. The Noods are these basic white doll creatures who play around in a void, usually prompted to act like a certain character when they're painted by balls of light. It's weird, it makes more sense when you see the bumpers. I have mixed feelings on these little guys. Just from a general character design perspective, it's great that they bring out the color designs of all sorts of shows and characters. But on the flip side, the way they're drawn is compromised. A lot of shows that owe a great deal of their memorability to character silhouettes are shorthanded when the Noods turn into them. Here's a random sampling of Total Drama character silhouettes. Now here they are as Noods. This was the end of advertisements treating the characters like characters. Now they were posters. It was also the beginning and swift end of CN's live action experiments. Classic Cartoon Network was pretty much dead, but modern Cartoon Network would rise from its ashes. But before then, I just wanted to bring attention to the new wave era.
Coming up next, my gym partner's a monkey on Cartoon Network.
This branding was used in Eastern and Pacific regions, such as my own New Zealand, and I remember seeing these in the city bumpers the most. We had none of those growing pains the US had to endure, just a bright red logo, a couple show clips, and a vast selection of rainbow lines to choose from. It wasn't much looking back, but it allowed for a much smoother transition into the modern era. Europe has its own transitional brandings, but I won't look at those. Arrow? Please, that's a weapon. A new logo, a new identity, a new lease on life. 2010 is usually considered the beginning of a renaissance for the network. The live-action stuff was slowly phased out, and its animated originals adopted simpler outer shells but more complex issues. I can't really speak to the quality of their past decade of output, since I haven't seen a lot of these shows, and I've already got a lot of catching up to do as is, but the Checkered era served as a fine accent to this new appeal. This 3D room feels like it could display any show, and while this shaded 3D style isn't what the shows were doing, it provided some contrast. Also, for the first time since the late 90s, the look wouldn't randomly disappear one day. They'd slowly fade in and out of more relevant looks. Maybe too relevant.
Good morning! All your favorites are right here. Wow! Now let's have an awesome day! Here on Cartoon Network.
Since 2013, the bumpers have all but relied on flat colors, increasingly simplified redesigns of current characters, and an overdose on CYMK-based color schemes. After the renaissance of the early 2010s, I can comment even less on if the network has declined again, but these branding styles are treated more like filler. None of this is really going to stick with you the same way the Powerhouse music, CN City, or even the Noods did in the past. Speaking as someone who goes to a design college, this sort of design work is all over the place, and it's never meant to absorb into you. You look at it once, and move on with your day. I don't mean to go on some rant about design mentalities across all of media becoming more homogenized, but Cartoon Network has been a very noticeable victim of less pleasing current trends. I can't blame the animators who make these bumpers, or whoever has to approve of these, because they're probably not given the budget or inspiration to draw outside the lines. Cable TV in general is running out of time, so it would make no sense to invest money and effort into a radical new look that only a few 100,000 Americans are gonna see. But we will remember the good times, all the classic cartoon faces greeting you to Cartoon Network for the first time, all the high-energy antics that the fresh faces got into before the show started, all the amazing locations brought to photoreal life by passionate teams of fans. For half of its existence, Cartoon Network's bumpers have suffered through a gradual watering down of appeal, but for that first half, you couldn't have asked for a better home for cartoons. Goodbye for now.